There are so many fantasy book releases in February. There's seriously 40 books that I'm going to be talking about, but I've decided not to do them all in this video. So this video will be through February 13th, which is like 19 books. And then I will be doing a second video, a part 2, that is for the second half of February. With that, let's get into the February releases. The first book I'm going to be talking about releases on February 5th. This is a self-published book by a YouTuber. This book is called Just Stab Me Now. I actually checked, my library has an ebook version of it, and there's a 26-week wait on it already. This is inspired by this short video series that this YouTuber did that was from the perspective of an author and a fantasy romance heroine protagonist who doesn't want to cooperate with the typical tropes in a fantasy romance, and it just sounds like a lot of fun. Caroline Lindy is determined that her new romance novel will be her best one yet. Fantasy, formal gowns, fencing, and of course a 20-something heroine to star in an enemies to lovers plot with all of Caroline's favorite tropes. But Lady Rosamond Hawkhurst is a 36-year-old widow with 2 children. Her sole focus is facilitating a peace treaty between her adopted nation and her homeland, and she flatly refuses to take the correct approach to there only being one bed. What is an author to do? Moving on to the very next day, February 6th, with the highly anticipated conclusion to the Empire of the Wolf trilogy. This is a series that I will be starting in February. As always, whenever I do later books in a series, I'm not going to read as much of the description because I don't want to give anything away. The third novel in the epic fantasy trilogy, which follows the tale of Sir Conrad von Volt, an emperor's justice, detective, judge, and executioner all in one. The next book, also coming out February 6th, is another highly anticipated release. This is The Tainted Cup. Featuring an unforgettable Holmes and Watson style pairing, a gloriously labyrinthine plot, and a haunting and wholly original fantasy world, The Tainted Cup brilliantly reinvents the classic mystery tale. The next book is a fairly short science fiction mystery book that sounds really interesting. I feel like there's a lot of SSF mysteries coming out in February, but there's also just a lot of books coming out in February. There are no second chances in the Pangu star system. Vare and Ariel, apprentices at the most prestigious biology lab among the system's moons, know this better than anyone. They've left behind difficult pasts and pinned their hopes for the future on Cal, their brilliant but difficult boss. But one night, while working in the lab, they find Cal sprawled on the floor, dead, murdered, and they immediately become the prime suspects. The next book is Infinity Alchemist, which is the first YA book on this list. I don't have very many YA books on this list, but there are a few that caught my eye that sound really interesting. Only an elite few are legally permitted to study the science of magic. So when Ash is rejected by the Lancaster Mages College, he takes a job as the school's groundkeeper instead, forced to learn alchemy in secret. There is also a handful of historical fiction books on this list. There's really not very many, but I enjoy checking out historical fiction, and this one sounds interesting. With visceral clarity and powerful prose, Dameron reveals the devastation of being made to feel invisible and the transformative power of being seen. Redwood Court is the celebration of extraordinary, ordinary people striving to achieve their own American dreams. Now, finally moving on to February 13th, of which there are very many books being released on February 13th. This book is pitched as like a fantasy sci-fi thriller. The title is called The Book of Love, which puts me off a little bit, but the synopsis has me intrigued. Late one night, Laura, Daniel, and Mo find themselves beneath the fluorescent lights of a high school classroom. Almost a year after disappearing from their hometown, the small seaside community of Lovesend, Massachusetts, having been presumed dead, which, in fact, they are. And we get another YA book on this list. This is the third and final book in the Deathless trilogy. Should I mention how long this book series has been on my TBR? Probably not. The dazzling final to the groundbreaking, best-selling Gilded One series. One girl holds the power to defeat the gods, but can she become one? Next, we have the second book in a science fiction detective novella series that has my attention, and I want to be checking the series out. Investigator Masa and Scholar Pleety reunite to solve a brand new mystery in this follow-up to the fan favorite cozy space opera detective mystery, The Mimicking of Known Successes. Masa has returned to Valagard on a missing persons case, for which she'll once again need Pleety's insight. There are also quite a few retellings on this list. This one is a Greek retelling book, which I feel like have been popular in the last few years. And this one honestly has my eye a little bit more than some of the other ones that came out recently. Among the women of Greek mythology, the witch Medea may be the most despised. Known for the brutal act of killing her own children to exact revenge on her deceitful husband, Medea has carved out a singularly infamous niche in our histories. But what if that's not the full story? The next book is based on Egyptian history. I believe this book is based on actual historical figures in Egyptian history, and it sounds quite interesting. When Neferura overhears Thutmose's plot to end her mother's rule, she knows he must be stopped, no matter the cost. The discovery of a mysterious tattooed wise woman and her shadowy network of spies offers an uneasy alliance. But the wise woman wields more power than Neferura knew possible, power with the potential to rival her own. Neferura must decide where her loyalties lie and how much she's willing to sacrifice to protect the people she loves before everything crumbles at the hand of a tyrant. Our next book is billed as a fantasy horror novel, which I'm not really into horror, but there is the occasional novel that piques my interest. Dead warriors abandon their peace to once again roam the land of the living, swinging rusty blades and chattering rotten teeth. Against the undead, the 9 only have 2 choices, fighting as one or becoming them. And now for what is probably one of the most anticipated February 13th releases, we have The Warm Hands of Ghosts. During the Great War, a combat nurse searches for her brother, believed dead in the trenches despite eerie signs to suggest otherwise. In this haunting, beautiful historical novel with a speculative twist from the best-selling author of The Bear and the Nightingale. Another book I've been seeing gaining some more traction and hype is The Foxwife, and this one sounds really unique and interesting. Some people think foxes are similar to ghosts because we go around collecting chi, or life force. But nothing could be further from the truth. We are living creatures just like you, only usually better looking. A brilliant world of mortals and spirits, humans and beasts, and their dazzling intersection. The Foxwife is a stunning novel about a winter full of mysterious deaths, a mother seeking revenge, and old folktales that may very well be true. And sticking with things that are scary, the next book I'm going to be talking about here that comes out February 13th is What Feasts at Night. I don't actually plan on reading this one because, like I said, I am not really a horror reader, but I know this is one that comes highly anticipated, so I wanted to include it on this list. The follow-up to Kingfisher's best-selling gothic novel, What Moves the Dead, retired soldier Alex Easton returns in a horrifying new adventure. The next book, The Briar Book of the Dead, does have the horror tag on Goodreads, but its comp titles are Uprooted and For the Wolf, which are not horror books, so I'm really not sure where this book fits in, but I take it that it is a dark fantasy book. However, things are changing in Silverton, with new forces coming into play and ancient mysteries and sins refusing to stay buried. And Anne Briar, the first non-witch born into a family for 300 years, will find herself at the center of the maelstrom. Still on February 13th, our next title is Gogmagog, which is just a fun title to say. This is a high fantasy series, the very first book in a high fantasy series that looks intriguing and fun. The Nisus is unlike any other river. Mysteries unfold with each port of call. Not many can navigate these channels. Not many know of its whirlpools and sandbanks, and of the ravenous creatures that lurk beneath the surface. Caddy used to have the necessary knowledge and the powers of spectral navigation, but her glory days are well behind her. This might be her final journey. The next book we have is The Book of Doors, which I'm already going to predict is going to reach outside of the typical fantasy readership, but I really don't know. It'll be interesting to see how this book goes. What Cassie is about to discover is that the Book of Doors is a special book that bestows an extraordinary power on whoever possesses it. And soon she and her best friend Izzy are exploring all that the Book of Doors can do, swept away from their quiet lives by the possibility of traveling to anywhere they want. And finally, the last book for the first half of February. Again, I will be making a part 2 with all the books coming out in the second half of February. This book is called A Flame in the North. With only her loyal shield maid and her own wits to rely upon, Soul must master power beyond her imagination to wrest the control of her fate. For the Blacklands army stirs, ready to cover the world in darkness unless Soul can find the courage to stop it. They thought the old ways were dead, but now the enemy awakens. And there you have all the books that are coming out in the first half of February that I know of. Of course, there's tons of other books that are not even on this list. Let me know if you found any of these interesting and what you plan on reading in February. And I hope to see you in another video. Happy